This is a Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari recording. All recordings of Vivekananda Kendra are in the public domain. For more information and also to volunteer, please visit www.vkendra.org. My India, the India Eternal by Swami Vivekananda. Read by Abhishek Shinghorai. Chapter 1. My India, the India Eternal.
India's history, culture and ideals. If there is any land on this earth that can lay claim to be the blessed Punya Bhumi, the land where humanity has attained its highest towards gentleness, towards generosity, towards purity, towards calmness, above all, the land of introspection and of spirituality, it is India. Political greatness or military power is never the mission of our race. It never was, and it never will be. But we find that the Indian race never stood for wealth. Although they acquired immense wealth, perhaps more than any other nation ever acquired, yet the nation did not stand for wealth. It was a powerful race for ages, yet we find that nation never stood for power, never went out of the country to conquer. Quite contained within their own boundaries, they never fought anybody. The Indian nation never stood for imperial glory. Wealth and power then were not the ideals of the race. A glorious destiny. My brethren, back as the days of the Upanishads, we have thrown the challenge to the world. Na prajaya, na dhanena, त्यागे नैके amrit tattva manushu. Not by progeny, not by wealth, but by renunciation alone, immortality is reached. Race after race has taken the challenge up and tried their utmost to solve the world riddle on the plane of desires. They have all failed in the past. The old ones have become extinct under the weight of wickedness and misery, which lust for power and gold brings in its train, and the new ones are tottering to their fall. The question has yet to be decided whether peace will survive or war, whether patience will survive or non-forbearance, whether goodness will survive or wickedness, whether muscle will survive or brain, whether worldliness will survive or spirituality. We have solved our problem ages ago and held on to it through good or evil fortune, and mean to hold on to it till the end of time. Our solution is unworldliness, renunciation. This is the theme of Indian life work, the burden of our eternal songs, the backbone of our existence, the foundation of our being, the raison d'etre of her very existence, the spiritualization of the human race. In this her life course, she has never deviated. Whether the Tatar ruled or the Turk, whether the Mughal ruled or the English. It is unfair to judge woman in the East by the Western standard. In the West, woman is the wife. In the East, she is mother. The Hindus worship the idea of mother, and even the monks are required to touch the earth with their foreheads before their mothers. Chastity is much esteemed. In India, the mother is the center of the family and our highest ideal. She is to us the representative of God, as God is the mother of the universe. It was a female sage who first found the unity of God and laid down this doctrine in one of the first hymns of the Vedas. He is of the Aryan race, who is born through prayer, and he is a non-Aryan who is born through sensuality. So deeply has this been recognized in India that there we even speak of adultery in marriage, except when marriage is consummated in prayer. That is the secret of the race, chastity. There are two great epics in the Sanskrit language, which are very ancient. They embody the manners and customs, the state of society, civilization, etc. of the ancient Indians. The oldest of these epics is called Ramayana, the life of Rama. Rama and Sita are the ideals of the Indian nation. All children, especially girls, worship Sita. The height of a woman's ambition is to be like Sita, the pure, the devoted, the all-suffering. Mahabharata means Great India, or the story of the great descendants of Bharata. This epic is the most popular one in India, and it exercises the same authority in India as Homer's poems did over the Greeks. The internal conflicts between righteousness and filial affection in the mind of the God-fearing, yet feeble, old, blind king Dhritarashtra, the majestic character of the grandsire Bhishma, the noble and virtuous nature of the royal Yudhishthira and of the other four brothers, has as mighty in valor as in devotion and loyalty. The peerless character of Krishna, unsurpassed in human wisdom, and not less brilliant the character of the women, the stately Queen Gandhari, the loving mother Kunti, the ever devoted and all-suffering Draupadi. These and hundreds of other characters of this epic and those of the Ramayana have been the cherished heritage of the whole Hindu world for the last several thousands of years and form the basis of their thoughts and of their moral and ethical ideas. In fact, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are the two encyclopedias of the ancient Aryan life and wisdom, portraying an ideal civilization which humanity has yet to aspire after. When you study these characters, you can at once find out how different is the ideal in India from that of the West. The West says, do, show your power by doing. India says, show your power by suffering. The West has solved the problem of how much a man can have. India has solved the problem of how little a man can have. India's contribution to the world, the debt which the world owes to our motherland, is immense. As I look back upon the history of my country, I do not find in the whole world another country which has done quite so much for the improvement of the human mind. Therefore, I have no words of condemnation for my nation. I tell them, you have done well. Only try to do better. We Hindus stand ready to be convinced that yours is the earlier religion, although we had ours some 300 years before yours was even thought of. The same holds good with respect to sciences. India has given to antiquity the earliest scientific physicians, and according to Sir William Hunter, she has even contributed to modern medical science by the discovery of various chemicals and by teaching you how to reform misshapen ears and noses. Even more, it has done in mathematics for algebra, geometry, astronomy, and the triumph of modern science, mixed mathematics, were all invented in India. Just so much as the 10 numerals, the very cornerstone of all present civilization, were discovered in India and are in reality Sanskrit words. In philosophy, we are even now head and shoulders above any other nation, as Schopenhauer, the great German philosopher, has confessed. In music, India gave to the world her system of notation, with the 7 cardinal notes and the diatonic scale. In philology, our Sanskrit language is now universally acknowledged to be the foundation of all European languages. In literature, our epics and poems and dramas rank as high as those of any language. Our Shakuntala was summarized by Germany's greatest poet as heaven and earth united. India has given to the world the fables of Aesop, which were copied by Aesop from an old Sanskrit book. It has given the Arabian Nights, yes, even the story of Cinderella and the beanstalks. In manufacture, India was the first to make cotton and purple dye. It was proficient in all works of jewelry. And the very word sugar, as well as the article itself, is the product of India. Lastly, she has invented the game of chess and cards and the dice. So great, in fact, was the superiority of India in every respect that it drew to her borders the hungry cohorts of Europe, and thereby indirectly brought about the discovery of America. And I challenge anybody to show one single period of her national life when India was lacking in spiritual giants, capable of moving the world. But her work is spiritual, and that cannot be done with blasts of war trumpets. And that cannot be done with blasts of war trumpets or the march of cohorts. Her influence has always fallen upon the world like that of the gentle dew, unheard and scarcely marked, yet bringing into bloom the fairest flowers of the earth. Here in this blessed land, the foundation, the backbone, the life center is religion and religion alone. Let others talk of politics, of the glory of acquisition of immense wealth poured in by trade, of the power and spread of commercialism, of the glorious fountain of physical liberty. But these the Hindu mind does not understand and does not want to understand. Touch him on spirituality, on religion, on God, on the soul, on the infinite, on spiritual freedom, and I assure you, the lowest peasant in India is better informed on these subjects than many a so-called philosopher in other lands. We have yet something to teach to the world. This is the very reason the raison d'être, that is, the nation has lived on. In spite of hundreds of years of persecution, in spite of nearly 1,000 years of foreign rule and foreign oppression, this nation still lives. The raison d'être is, it still holds to God, to the treasure house of religion and spirituality. I have seen a little of the world, traveling among the races of the East and the West, and everywhere I find among nations one great ideal which forms the backbone, so to speak, of that race. With some, it is politics. With others, it is social culture. Others, again, may have intellectual culture, and so on for their national background. But this, our motherland, has religion and religion alone for its basis, for its backbone, for the bedrock upon which the whole building of its life has been based. See Rome. Rome's mission was imperial power, expansion, and so soon as that was touched, Rome fell to pieces, passed out. The mission of Greece was intellect. As soon as that was touched, why? Greece passed out. So in modern times, Spain and all these modern countries, each nation has a mission for the world. So long as that mission is not hurt, the nation lives, despite every difficulty. But as soon as its mission is destroyed, the nation collapses. Now, that vitality of India has not been touched yet. They have not given up that, and it is still strong, in spite of all their superstitions. Hideous superstitions are there, most revolting some of them. Never mind, the national life current is still there, the mission of the race. God and God alone. She clings unto that like grim death. Still, there is hope there. The Hindu man drinks religiously, sleeps religiously, walks religiously, marries religiously, walks religiously, marries religiously, robs religiously. That shows that the vitality of the race, the mission of the race, is religion. And because that has not been touched, therefore that race lives. Every other problem in life must be subordinated to that one principal theme, that is religion. That is also the law of harmony in music. There may be a nation whose theme of life is political supremacy. Religion and everything else must become subordinate to that one great theme of its life. But here is another nation whose great theme of life is spirituality and renunciation, whose one watchword is that this world is all vanity and a delusion of 3 days. The eternal India. India I loved before I came away. Now the very dust of India has become holy to me. The very air is now to me holy. It is now the Holy Land, the place of pilgrimage, the Tirtha. We all hear so much about the degradation of India. There was a time when I also believed in it. But today, standing on the vantage ground of experience, with eyes cleared of obstructive predispositions and above all, of the highly colored picture of other countries toned down to their proper shade and light by actual contact, I confess, in all humility, that I was wrong. Thou blessed land of the Aryas, thou wasn't never degraded. Scepters have been broken and thrown away. The ball of power has passed from one hand to hand. But in India, scepters have been broken and thrown away. The ball of power has passed from hand to hand. But in India, courts and kings always touched only a few. The vast mass of the people, from the highest to the lowest, has been left to pursue its own inevitable course. The current of national life flowing at times slow and half-conscious, at others strong and awakened. I stand in awe before the unbroken procession of scores of shining centuries, with here and there a dim link in the chain, only to flare up with added brilliance in the next. And there she is walking, with her own majestic steps, my motherland, to fulfill her glorious destiny, which no power on earth or in heaven can check. The regeneration of man the brute into man the God. This national ship has been ferrying millions and millions of souls across the waters of life. But today, perhaps through your own fault, this boat has become a little damaged, has sprung a leak. And would you therefore curse it? Is it fit that you stand up and pronounce malediction upon it? One that has done more work than any other thing in the world. If there are holes in this national ship, this society of ours, we are its children. Let us go and stop the holes. Let us gladly do it with our heart's blood. And if we cannot, then let us die. We will make a plug of our brains and put them into the ship. But condemn it never. Say not one harsh word against this society. I love it for its past greatness. I love you all because you are the children of God, and because you are the children of the glorious forefathers. How then can I curse you? Never. All blessings be upon you. I have come to you, my children, to tell you all my plans. If you hear them, I am ready to work with you. But if you will not listen to them, and even kick me out of India, I will come back and tell you that we are all sinking. I have come now to sit in your midst, and if we are to sink, let us all sink together, but never let curses rise to our lips. O India, forget not that the ideal of thy womanhood is Sita, Savitri, Damayanti. Forget not that the God thou worshippest, the great ascetic of ascetics, the all-renouncing Shankara, the Lord of Uma. Forget not that thy marriage, thy wealth, thy life are not for sense pleasure, are not for thy individual personal happiness. Forget not that thou art born as a sacrifice to the mother's altar. Forget not that thy social order is but the reflex of the infinite universal motherhood. Forget not that the lower classes, the ignorant, the poor, the illiterate, the cobbler, the sweeper are thy flesh and blood, thy brothers. Thou brave one, be bold, take courage, be proud that thou art an Indian, and proudly proclaim, I am an Indian. Every Indian is my brother. Say, the ignorant Indian, the poor and destitute Indian, the Brahmin Indian, the Pariah Indian is my brother. Thou too, clad with but a rag round thy loins, proudly proclaim at the top of thy voice, the Indian is my brother, the Indian is my life. India's gods and goddesses are my God. India's society is the cradle of my infancy, the pleasure garden of my youth, the sacred heaven, the Varanasi of my old age. Say, brother, the soil of India is my highest heaven. The good of India is my good. And repeat and pray day and night. O thou Lord of Gauri, O thou Mother of the universe, vouchsafe manliness unto me. O thou Mother of strength, take away my weakness, take away my unmanliness, and make me a man.
End of Chapter 1. My India, the India Eternal by Swami Vivekananda. This is a Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari recording. All recordings of Vivekananda Kendra are in the public domain. For more information and also to volunteer, please visit www.vkendra.org. This is a Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari recording. All recordings of Vivekananda Kendra are in the public domain. For more information and also to volunteer, please visit www.vkendra.org. My India, the India Eternal by Swami Vivekananda. Read by Abhishek Shinghorai. Chapter 2. Causes of our Downfall.
The great national sin, the neglect of the masses. I consider that the greatest national sin is the neglect of the masses, and that is one of the causes of our downfall. Those uncared for, lower classes of India, the peasants and the weavers and the rest, who have been conquered by foreigners and are looked down upon by their own people, it is they who from time immemorial have been working silently without even getting the remuneration of their labor. The poor, the low, the sinner in India have no friends, no help. They cannot rise. Try however they may, they sink lower and lower every day. They feel the blows showered upon them by a cruel society, and they do not know whence the blow comes. The one thing that is at the root of all evils in India is the condition of the poor. Priest power and foreign conquest have trodden them down for centuries, and at last the poor of India have forgotten that they are human beings. People cheated. Evidences from history. Ancient India had for centuries been the battlefield for the ambitious projects of two of our foremost classes, the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas. On the one hand, the priesthood stood between the lawless social tyranny of the princes over the masses, whom the Kshatriyas declared to be the legal food. On the other hand, the Kshatriya power was the one potent force which struggled with any success against the spiritual tyranny of the priesthood and the ever-increasing chain of ceremonials which they were forging to bind down the people with. The tug of war began in the earliest periods of the history of our race, and throughout the Shrutis it can be distinctly traced. A momentary lull came when Sri Krishna, leading the faction of Kshatriya power and of Jnana, showed the way to reconciliation. The result was the teachings of the Gita, the essence of philosophy, of liberality, and of religion. The ambition of these two classes to be the masters of the poor and ignorant was there, and the strife once more became fierce. The meager literature that has come down to us from that period brings to us but faint echoes of that mighty past strife. But at last it broke out as a victory for the Kshatriyas, a victory for Jnana, for liberty, and ceremonial had to go down, much of it forever. This upheaval was what is known as the Buddhistic Reformation. On the religious side, it represented freedom from ceremonial. On the political side, overthrow of the priesthood by the Kshatriyas. It is a significant fact that the two greatest men ancient India produced were both Kshatriyas, Krishna and Buddha. And still more significant is the fact that both of these god men threw open the door of knowledge to everyone, irrespective of birth or sex. In spite of its wonderful moral strength, Buddhism was extremely iconoclastic, and much of its force being spent in merely negative attempts, it had to die out in the land of its birth, and what remained of it became full of superstitions and ceremonials, 100 times cruder than those it was intended to suppress. Thus, even the current of life, set in motion by the greatest soul that ever wore a human form, the Bhagavan Buddha himself, became a miasmatic pool, and India had to wait for centuries until Shankara arose, followed in quick succession by Ramanuja and Madhava. The result was the bringing back of the Vedas to India, a revival of Vedanta, such as India never has seen before. Even the householders began to study the Aranyakas. In the Buddhistic movement, the Kshatriyas were the real leaders. The whole masses of them became Buddhists. In the zeal of reform and conversion, the popular dialects had been almost exclusively cultivated to the neglect of Sanskrit, and the larger portion of Kshatriyas had become disjointed from the Vedic literature and Sanskrit learning. Thus, this wave of reform, which came from the south, benefited to a certain extent the priesthood and the priests only. For the rest of India's millions, it forged more chains than they had ever known before. The Kshatriyas have always been the backbone of India. So also, they have been the supporters of science and liberty. And their voices had rung out again and again to clear the land from superstitions. And throughout the history of India, they ever formed the invulnerable barrier to aggressive priestly tyranny. When the greater part of their number sank into ignorance and another portion mixed their blood with savages from Central Asia and lent their swords to establish the rules of priests in India, her cup became full to the brim, and down sank the land of Bharata, not to rise again, until the Kshatriya rouses himself and, making himself free, strikes the chain from the feet of the rest. The nation is sinking. The curse of unnumbered millions is on our heads. The unnumbered millions to whom we have talked of Advaita and whom we have hated with all our strength. The unnumbered millions for whom we have invented the doctrine of Lokacharya, to whom we have talked theoretically that we are all the same and all are one with the same Lord, without even an ounce of practice. Mass operation in the name of religion. No religion on earth preaches the dignity of humanity in such a lofty strain as Hinduism, and no religion on earth treads upon the necks of the poor and the low in such a fashion as Hinduism. In India, there is a howling cry that we are very poor. But how many charitable associations are there for the well-being of the poor? How many people really weep for the sorrows and sufferings of the millions of poor in India? Are we men? What are we doing for their livelihood, for their improvement? We do not touch them. We avoid their company. Are we men? Those thousands of Brahmanas, what are they doing for the low, downtrodden masses of India? Don't touch is the only phrase that plays upon their lips. How mean and degraded has our eternal religion become at their hands. Wherein does our religion lie now? In don't touchism alone and nowhere else. Priestcraft is the bane of India. Can man degrade his brother and himself escape degradation? The greatest of all truths discovered by our ancestors is that the universe is one. Can one injure anyone without injuring himself? The mass of Brahmin and Kshatriya tyranny has recoiled upon their own heads with compound interest. And 1,000 years of slavery and degradation is what the inexorable law of karma is visiting upon them. Another cause, monopoly of education. The chief cause of India's ruin has been the monopolizing of the whole education and intelligence of the land by dint of pride and royal authority among a handful of men. The whole difference between the West and the East is in this. They are nations, we are not. That is, civilization. Education here is general. It penetrates into the masses. The higher classes in India and America are the same, but the distance is infinite between the lower classes of the two countries. Why was it so easy for the English to conquer India? It was because they are a nation, we are not. When one of our great men dies, we must sit for centuries to have another. They can produce them as fast as they die. It is the dearth of great ones. Why so? Because they have such a bigger field of recruiting their great ones. We have so small. A nation of 300 millions has the smallest field of recruiting its great ones compared with nations of 30, 40 or 60 millions, because the number of educated men and women in those nations is so great. This is the great defect in our nation and must be removed. People have been taught they are non-entities. For centuries, people have been taught theories of degradation. They have been told that they are nothing. The masses have been told all over the world that they are not human beings. They have been so frightened for centuries till they have nearly become animals. Never were they allowed to hear of the Atma, laziness and meanness. We would do nothing ourselves and would scoff at others who try to do something. This is the bane that has brought about our downfall as a nation. Want of sympathy and lack of energy are at the root of all misery, and you must therefore give these two up. Who but the Lord knows about potentialities there are in particular individuals? Let all have opportunities and leave the rest to the Lord. It is indeed very difficult to have an equal love for all, but without it, there is no mukti. And yet another cause, exclusiveness. One of the great causes of India's misery and downfall has been that she narrowed herself, went into her shell as the oyster does, and refused to give her jewels and her treasures to the other races of mankind, refused to give the life-giving truths to thirsting nations outside the Aryan fold. That has been the one great cause, that we did not go out, that we did not compare notes with other nations. No man, no nation, my son, can hate others and live. India's doom was sealed the very day they invented the word mleccha and stopped from communion with others. Whatever cloak ancient or modern sophistry may try to throw over it, the inevitable result, the vindication of the moral law, that none can hate others without degenerating himself. The race that was foremost amongst the ancient races is now a byword and a scorn among nations. Lack of organization. Our nation is totally lacking in the faculty of organization. It is this one drawback which produces all sort of evil. We are altogether averse to making a common cause for anything. The first requisite for organization is obedience. In spite of the greatness of the Upanishads, in spite of our boasted ancestry of sages, compared to many other races, I must tell you that we are weak, very weak. First of all is our physical weakness. That physical weakness is the cause of at least 1/3 of our miseries. We are lazy, we cannot work, we cannot combine, we do not love each other. We are intensely selfish. Not 3 of us can come together without hating each other, without being jealous of each other. We speak of many things, parrot-like, but never do them. Speaking and not doing has become a habit with us. What is the cause of that? physical weakness. This sort of weak brain is not able to do anything. We must strengthen it. Another great sin: neglect of womenfolk. In India, there are two great evils: trampling on the woman and grinding the poor through caste restrictions. Do you know who is the real Shakti worshipper? It is he who knows that God is the omnipresent force in the universe and sees in woman the manifestation of that force. Manu again has said that gods bless those families where women are happy and well treated. Here, men in Western countries treat their women as well as can be desired, and hence they are so prosperous, so learned, so free, and so energetic. But why is it that we are slavish, miserable, and dead? The answer is obvious. Why is it that our country is the weakest and the most backward of all countries? Because Shakti is held in dishonor there.
End of chapter 2. My India, the India Eternal by Swami Vivekananda. This is a Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari recording. All recordings of Vivekananda Kendra are in the public domain. For more information and also to volunteer, please visit www.vkendra.org. This is a Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari recording. All recordings of Vivekananda Kendra are in the public domain. For more information and also to volunteer, please visit www.vkendra.org. My India, the India Eternal by Swami Vivekananda. Read by Abhishek Shinghorai. Chapter 3. Way to Regeneration.
Do not destroy. In the first place, I would ask mankind to recognize this maxim: do not destroy. Iconoclastic reformers do not good to the world. Break not, pull not anything down, but build. Help if you can. If you cannot, fold your hands and stand by and see things go on. Do not injure. If you cannot render help, take man where he stands, and from there give him a lift. What can you and I do? Do you think you can teach even a child? You cannot. The child teaches himself. The masses, the fountainhead of power. Whether the leadership of society be in the hands of those who monopolize learning or wield the power of riches or arms, the source of its power is always the subject masses. By so much as the class in power severes itself from its source, by so much is it sure to become weak. Self-love is the first teacher of self-renunciation. For the preservation of the individual's interest only, one looks first to the well-being of the whole. In the interest of one's own nation is one's own interest. In the well-being of one's own nation is one's own well-being. Without the cooperation of the many, most works can by no means go on. Even self-defense becomes an impossibility. The individual's life is in the life of the whole. The individual's happiness is in the happiness of the whole. Apart from the whole, the individual's existence is inconceivable. This is an eternal truth and is the bedrock on which the universe is built. To move slowly towards the infinite whole, bearing a constant feeling of intense sympathy and sameness with it, being happy with its happiness, and being distressed in its affliction is the individual's sole duty. Laboring classes of India, as a result of your silent, constant labor, Babylon, Persia, Alexandria, Greece, Rome, Venice, Genoa, Baghdad, Samarkand, Spain, Portugal, France, Denmark, Holland, and England has successively attained supremacy and eminence. And you? Well, who cares to think of you? Your ancestors wrote a few philosophical works, penned a dozen or so epics, or built a number of temples. That is all. and you rend the skies with triumphal shouts. And you rend the skies with triumphal shouts. While those whose heart's blood has contributed to all the progress that has been made in the world, well, who cares to praise them? The world-conquering heroes of spirituality, war and poetry are in the eyes of all, and they have received the homage of mankind. But where nobody looks, no one gives a word of encouragement, where everybody hates, that living amid such circumstances and displaying boundless patience, infinite love and dauntless practicality, our proletariat are doing their duty in their homes day and night without the slightest murmur. Well, is there no heroism in this? Many turn out to be heroes when they have got some great task to perform. Even a coward easily gives up his life, and the most selfish man behaves disinterestedly when there is a multitude to cheer them on. But blessed indeed is he who manifests the same unselfishness and devotion to duty in the smallest of acts, unnoticed by all. And it is you who are actually doing this. Ye ever trampled laboring classes of India, I bow to you. Elevation of the masses. Keep the motto before you. Elevation of the masses without injuring their religion. Remember that the nation lives in the cottage. The fate of a nation depends upon the condition of the masses. Can you raise them? Can you give them back their lost individuality without making them lose their innate spiritual nature? I consider that the great national sin is the neglect of the masses, and that is one of the causes of our downfall. No amount of politics would be of any avail until the masses in India are once more well educated, well fed, and well cared for. They pay for our education, they build our temples, but in return they get kicks. They are practically our slaves. If we want to regenerate India, we must work for them. Our mission is for the destitute, the poor, and the illiterate peasantry and laboring classes. And if after everything has been done for them first, there is spare time, then only for the gentry. Those peasants and laboring people will be won over by love. Udvare datma natmanam. One must raise oneself by one's own exertions. This holds good in all spheres. This moment they will come to understand their own condition and feel the necessity of help and improvement. Know that your work is taking effect and is in the right direction. The peasants and laboring classes are in a moribund condition. So, what is needed is that the moneyed people will only help them to regain their vitality and nothing more. Then leave the peasants and laborers to look to their own problem, to grapple with and solve it. Religion not at fault. Oh, how my heart ached to think of what we think of the poor, the low in India. They have no chance, no escape, no way to climb up. The poor, the low, the sinner in India have no friends, no help. They sink lower and lower every day. Thoughtful people within the last few years have seen it, but unfortunately laid it at the door of the Hindu religion. And to them, the only way of bettering is by crushing this grandest religion of the world. Hear me, my friend. I have discovered the secret to the grace of the Lord. Religion is not in fault. On the other hand, your religion teaches you that every being is only your own self multiplied. But it was the want of practical application, the want of sympathy, the want of heart. This state of things must be removed, not by destroying religion, but by following the greatest teachings of the Hindu faith and joining with it the wonderful sympathy of that logical development of Hinduism, Buddhism. Liberty is the first condition of growth. Your ancestors gave every liberty to the soul and religion grew. They put the body under every bondage and society did not grow. The opposite is the case in the West. Every liberty to society, none to religion. Now are falling off the shackles from the feet of Eastern society as from those of Western religion. The West wants every bit of spirituality through social improvement. The East wants every bit of social power through spirituality. Thus, it was that the modern reformers saw no way to reform but by first crushing out the religion of India. They tried and they failed. Why? Because few of them ever studied their own religion and not one ever underwent the training necessary to understand the mother of all religions. I claim that no destruction of religion is necessary to improve the Hindu society, and that this state of society exists not on account of religion, but because religion has not been applied to society as it should have been. This I am ready to prove from our old books, every word of it. This is what I teach, and this is what we must struggle all our lives to carry out. Know your past. Out of the past is built the future. Look back. Therefore, as far as you can, drink deep of the eternal fountains that are behind, and after that, look forward, march forward, and make India brighter, greater, much higher than she ever was. Our ancestors were great. We must first recall that. We must learn the elements of our being, the blood that courses in our veins. We must build an India yet greater than what she has been. Nowadays, everybody blames those who constantly look back to their past. It is said that so much looking back to the past is the cause of all India's woes. To me, on the contrary, it seems that the opposite is true. So long as they forgot the past, the Hindu nation remained in a state of stupor. And as soon as they began to look into their past, there is on every side a fresh manifestation of life. It is out of this past that the future has to be molded. This past will become the future. The more, therefore, the Hindus study the past, the more glorious will be their future. And whoever tries to bring the past to the door of everyone is a great benefactor to his nation. The degeneration of India came not because the laws and customs of the ancients were bad, but because they were not allowed to be carried to the legitimate conclusions. The first work that demands our attention is that the most wonderful truths confined in our Upanishads, in our scriptures, in our Puranas must be brought out from the books, brought out from the monasteries, brought out from the forests, brought out from the possession of selected bodies of people and scattered broadcast all over the land, so that these truths may run like fire all over the country from north to south and east to west, from the Himalayas to the Comorin, from Sindh to the Brahmaputra. Respect for the great men of the country. We have to introduce the worship of the great saints, those great-souled ones who have realized the eternal truths are to be presented before the people as the ideals to be followed. As in the case of India, Sri Ramachandra, Mahavira, Sri Krishna and Sri Ramakrishna among others. Can you bring in the worship of Sri Ramachandra and Mahavira in this country? Spread far and wide the worship of Sri Krishna roaring the Gita out with the voice of a lion? We now mostly need the ideal of a hero with the tremendous spirit of the Rajas thrilling through his veins from head to foot. The hero who will dare and die to know the truth. The hero whose armor is renunciation, whose sword is wisdom. Religion not to be hurt. Keep the motto before you. Elevation of the masses without injuring their religion. Can you become an Occidental of Occidentals in your spirit of equality, freedom, work and energy, and at the same time a Hindu to the very backbone in religious culture and instincts? This is to be done, and we will do it. I claim that no destruction of religion is necessary to improve the Hindu society, and that this state of society exists not on account of religion, but because religion has not been applied to society as it should have been. In religion lies the vitality of India, and so long as the Hindu race do not forget the great inheritance of their forefathers, there is no power on earth to destroy them. When the lifeblood is strong and pure, no disease germ can live in that body. Our lifeblood is spirituality. If it flows clear, if it flows strong and pure and vigorous, everything is right. Political, social, any other material defects, even the poverty of the land, will all be cured if that blood is pure. If you succeed in the attempt to throw off your religion and take up either politics or society or any other things as your center, as the vitality of your national life, the result will be that you will become extinct. To prevent this, you must make all and everything work through the vitality of your religion. Every man has to make his own choice. So has every nation. We made our choice ages ago, and we must abide by it. And, after all, it is not such a bad choice. Is it such a bad choice in this world to think not of matter but of spirit, not of man but of God, that intense faith in another world, that intense hatred for this world, that intense power of renunciation, that intense faith in God, that intense faith in the immortal soul is in you? I challenge anyone to give it up. You cannot. You may try to impose upon me by becoming a materialist, by talking materialism for a few months, but I know what you are. If I take you by the hand, back you come as good tastes as ever were born. How can you change your nature? So every improvement in India requires first of all an upheaval in religion. Before flooding India with socialistic or political ideas, first deluge the land with spiritual ideas. The Hindu must not give up his religion, but must keep religion within its proper limits and give freedom to society to grow. All the reformers in India made the serious mistake of holding religion accountable for all the horrors of priestcraft and degeneration, and went forthwith to pull down the indestructible structure. And what was the result? Failure. Beginning from Buddha down to Ram Mohan Roy, everyone made the mistake of holding caste to be a religious institution and tried to pull down religion and caste altogether, for good or for evil. The religious ideal has been flowing into India for thousands of years. For good or evil, the Indian atmosphere has been filled with ideals of religion for shining scores of centuries. For good or evil, we have been born and brought up in the very midst of the ideals of religion, till it has entered into our very blood and tingled with every drop in our veins, and has become one with our constitution, become the very vitality of our lives. Can you give such religion up without the rousing of the same energy in reaction, without feeling the channel which that mighty river has cut out for itself in the course of thousands of years? Do you want that the Ganga should go back to its icy bed and begin a new course? Even if that were possible, it would be impossible for this country to give up her characteristic course of religious life and take up for herself a new career of politics or something else. You can work only under the law of least resistance, and this religious line is the line of least resistance in India. This is the line of life, this is the line of growth, and this is the line of well-being in India, to follow the track of religion. I do not mean to say that other things are not necessary. I do not mean to say that political or social improvements are not necessary. But what I mean is this, and I want you to bear it in mind, that they are secondary here and the religion is primary. The Indian mind is first religious, then anything else. In India, social reform has to be preached by showing how much more spiritual a life the new system will bring, and politics has to be preached by showing how much it will improve the one thing that the nation wants, its spirituality. Not by religion alone. First bread and then religion. The present Hindu society is organized only for spiritual men and hopelessly crushes out everybody else. Why? Where shall they go who want to enjoy the world a little with its frivolities? Just as our religion takes in all, so should our society. This is to be worked out by first understanding the true principles of our religion and then applying them to society. This is the slow but sure work to be done. Yet, perhaps some sort of materialism toned down to our own requirements would be a blessing to many of our brothers who are not yet ripe for the highest truths. This is the mistake made in every country and in every society. And it is a greatly regrettable thing that in India, where it was always understood, the same mistake of forcing the highest truths on people who are not ready for them has been made of late. My method need not to be yours. Material civilization, nah. Even luxury is necessary to create work for the poor. Bread. I do not believe in a God who cannot give me bread here, giving me eternal bliss in heaven. India is to be raised. The poor are to be fed. Education is to be spread. And the evil of priestcraft is to be removed. No priestcraft, no social tyranny. More bread, more opportunity for everybody. Now this is to be brought about slowly and by only insisting on our religion and giving liberty to our society. Root up priestcraft from the old religion and you get the best religion in the world. Do you understand me? Can you make a European society with India's religion? I believe it is possible and must be. Everything goes to show that socialism or some form of rule by the people, call it what you will, is coming on the boards. The people will certainly want the satisfaction of their material needs. Less work, no operation, no war, more food. What guarantee have we that this or any civilization will last unless it is based on religion, on the goodness of man? Everything goes to show that socialism or some other form of rule by the people, call it what you will, is coming on the boards. The people will certainly want the satisfaction of their material needs. Less work, no oppression, no war, more food. What guarantee have we that this or any civilization will last unless it is based on religion, on the goodness of man? Uplift of women. The uplift of the women, the awakening of the masses must come first, and then only can any real good come about for the country, for India. All nations have attained greatness by paying proper respect to women. That country and that nation which do not respect women have never become great, nor will ever be in future. Education, the primary need. Education, education, education alone. Traveling through many cities of Europe and observing in them the comforts and education of even the poor people, there was brought to my mind the state of our own poor people, and I used to shed tears. What made the difference? Education was the answer I got. Through education comes faith in one's own self, and through faith in one's own self, the inherent Brahman is waking up in them, while the Brahman in us is gradually becoming dormant. The only service to be done for our lower classes is to give them education, to develop their lost individuality. They are to be given ideas. Their eyes are to be opened to what is going on in the world around them, and then they will work out their own salvation. Every nation, every man and every woman must work out their own salvation. Give them ideas. That is the only help they require, and then the rest must follow as the effect. Ours is to put the chemicals together. The crystallization comes in the law of nature. Our duty is to put ideas into their heads. They will do the rest. This is what is to be done in India. It takes time, quite a long time, to make a healthy, strong public opinion which will solve its own problems. And in the interim, we shall have to wait. The whole problem of social reform, therefore, resolves itself into this. Where are those who want reform? Make them first. A few men who think that certain things are evil will not make a nation move. First, educate the nation. Therefore, even for social reform, the first duty is to educate the people, and you will have to wait till that time comes. A nation is advanced in proportion as education and intelligence spread among the masses. The chief cause of India's ruin has been the monopolizing of the whole education and intelligence of the land by dint of pride and royal authority among a handful of men. If we are to rise again, we shall have to do it in the same way, that is, by spreading education among the masses. Education for self-reliance. All the wealth of the world cannot help one little Indian village if the people are not taught to help themselves. Our work should be mainly educational, both moral and intellectual. Multi-dimensional exchange of ideas are must. Give and take is the law, and if India wants to raise herself once more, it is absolutely necessary that she brings out her treasures and throws them broadcast among the nations of the earth, and in return be ready to receive what others have to give her. Expansion is life, contraction is death. Love is life, and hatred is death. We commenced to die the day we began to hate other races, and nothing can prevent our death unless we come back to expansion, which is life. We must mix, therefore, with all the races of the earth, and every Hindu that goes out to travel in foreign parts render more benefit to his country than hundreds of men who are bundles of superstitions and selfishness. India's doom was sealed the very day they invented the word mleccha and stopped from communion with others. One of the great causes of India's misery and downfall has been that she narrowed herself, went into her shell as the oyster does, and refused to give her jewels and her treasures to the other races of mankind, refused to give the life-giving truths to thirsting nations outside the Aryan fold. That has been the one great cause, that we did not go out, that we did not compare notes with other nations. Therefore, we must go out, and the secret of life is to give and take. Are we to take always? To sit at the feet of the Westerners to learn everything, even religion? We can learn mechanism from them. We can learn many other things, but we have to teach them something, and that is our religion. That is our spirituality. For a complete civilization, the world is waiting for the treasures to come out of India, waiting for the marvelous spiritual inheritance of the race, which through decades of degradation and misery, the nation has still clutched to her breast. The world is waiting for that treasure. Little do you know how much of hunger and of thirst there is outside of India for those wonderful treasures of our forefathers. Therefore, we must go out, exchange our spirituality for anything they have to give us. For the marvels of the region of spirit, we will exchange the marvels of the region of matter. We will not be students always, but teachers also. There cannot be friendship without equality, and there cannot be equality when one party is always the teacher and the other party sits always at his feet. If you want to become equal with the Englishman or the American, you will have to teach as well as to learn, and you have plenty yet to teach to the world for centuries to come. What we want are Western science coupled with Vedanta, Brahmacharya as the guiding motto, and also Shraddha and faith in one's own self. What we need, is to study, independent of foreign control, different branches of the knowledge that is our own, and with it, the English language and Western science. We need technical education and all else that may develop industries so that men, instead of seeking for service, may earn enough to provide for themselves. Can you become an Occidental of Occidentals in your spirit of equality, freedom, work and energy, and at the same time a Hindu to the very backbone in religious culture and instincts? As Western ideas of organization and external civilization are penetrating and pouring into our country, whether we will have them or not, so Indian spirituality and philosophy are deluging the lands of the West. None can resist it, and no more can we resist some sort of material civilization from the West. A little of it perhaps is good for us, and a little spiritualization is good for the West. Thus the balance will be preserved. It is not that we ought to learn everything from the West, or that they have to learn everything from us. A poor man's life is hemmed in and bound down by the tremendous spiritual and ethical laws for which he has no use. Hands off. Let the poor fellow enjoy himself a little, and then he will raise himself up, and renunciation will come to him of itself. Perhaps in this line we can be taught something by the Western people, but we must be cautious in learning these things. I am sorry to say that most of the examples one meets nowadays of men who have imbibed the Western ideas are more or less failures. There are two great obstacles on our path in India: the Scylla of old orthodoxy and the Charybdis of modern European civilization. Of these two, I vote for the old orthodoxy and not for the Europeanized system. There is a great danger lest by this huge wave of Western spirit are washed away all our most precious jewels, earned through the ages of hard labor. True, there is fear lest falling into this strong whirlpool, even the land of Bharata forgets itself so far as to be turned into a battlefield in the struggle after earthly enjoyments. Ay, there is fear too, lest going to imitate the impossible and impracticable foreign ways, rooting out as they do our national customs and ideals, we lose all that we hold dear in this life and be undone in the next. To avoid these calamities, we must always keep the wealth of our own home before our eyes, so that everyone, down to the masses, may always know and see what his own ancestral property is. We must exert ourselves to do that, and side by side, we should be brave to open our doors to receive all available light from outside. Let rays of light come in sharp driving showers from the four quarters of the earth. Let the intense flood of light flow in from the west. What of that? Whatever is weak and corrupt is liable to die. What are we to do with it? If it goes, let it go. What harm does it do to us? What is strong and invigorating is immortal. Who can destroy that? Have we to learn anything else? Have we to learn anything from the world? We have, perhaps, to gain a little in material knowledge, in the power of organization, in the ability to handle powers, organizing powers, in bringing the best results out of the smallest of causes. This perhaps, to a certain extent, we may learn from the West. But if anyone preaches in India the ideal of eating and drinking and making merry, if anyone wants to apotheosize the material world into a god, that man is a liar. He has no place in this holy land. The Indian mind does not want to listen to him. Do you know what my idea is? By preaching the profound secrets of the Vedanta religion in the Western world, we shall attract the sympathy and regard of these mighty nations, maintaining forever the position of their teacher in spiritual matters, and they will remain our teachers in all material concerns. The day when, surrendering the spiritual into their hands, our countrymen would sit at the feet of the West to learn religion, that day indeed the nationality of this fallen nation will be dead and gone for good. Nothing will come of crying day and night before them, "Give me this or give me that." When there will grow a link of sympathy and regard between both nations by this give and take intercourse, there will be then no need for these noisy cries. They will do everything of their own accord. I believe that by this cultivation of religion and the wider diffusion of Vedanta, both this country and the West will gain enormously. To me, the pursuit of politics is a secondary means in comparison with this. I will lay down my life to carry out this belief practically. If you believe in any other way of accomplishing the good of India, well, you may go on working your own way. India has to learn from Europe the conquest of external nature, and Europe has to learn from India the conquest of internal nature. Then there will be neither Hindus nor Europeans. There will be the ideal humanity which has conquered both the nature, the external and the internal. We have developed one phase of humanity, and they another. It is the union of the two that is wanted. A new India, on Indian traditions. To the reformers, I'll point out that I am a great reformer than any one of them. They want to reform only little bits. I want root and branch reform. Where we differ is in the method. Theirs is the method of destruction. Mine is that of construction. I do not believe in reform. I believe in growth. I do not dare to put myself in the position of God and dictate to our society. This way thou shouldst move and not that. I simply want to be like the squirrel in the building of Rama's bridge, who was quite content to put on the bridge his little quota of sand dust. This wonderful national machine has walked through ages. This wonderful river of national life is flowing before us. Who knows and who dares to say whether it is good and how it shall move? Feed the national life with the fuel it wants, but the growth is its own. None can dictate its growth to it. Evils are plentiful in our society, but so are there evils in every other society. Why condemn? Everybody can show what evil is, but he is the friend of mankind who finds a way out of the difficulty. Did India ever stand in want of reformers? Do you read the history of India? Who was Ramanuja? Who was Shankara? Who was Nanak? Who was Chaitanya? Who was Kabir? Who was Dadu? Who were all these great preachers, one following the other, a galaxy of stars of the first magnitude? They all tried, and their work is still going on. The difference is this: they had not the fanfaronade of the reformers of today. They had no curses on their lips as modern reformers have. Their lips pronounced only blessings. They never condemned. They did not say, "You have been wicked, now let us be good." They said, "You have been good, but let us now be better." That makes a whole world of difference. We must grow according to our nature. When is it to attempt the lines of action that foreign societies have engrafted upon us? It is impossible. Glory unto God that it is impossible that we cannot be twisted and tortured into the shape of other nations. I do not condemn the institutions of other races. They are good for them, but not for us. What is meat for them may be poison for us. This is the first lesson to learn. With other sciences, other institutions and other traditions behind them, they have got their present system. We, with our traditions, with thousands of years of karma behind us, naturally can only follow our own bent, run in our own grooves, and that we shall have to do. We need a band of fiery patriots. I heard in Japan that it was the belief of the girls of that country that their dolls would be animated if they were loved with all their heart. The Japanese girl never breaks her doll. I too believe that India will awake again if anyone could love with all his heart the people of the country. Bereft of the grace of affluence, of blasted fortune, their discretion totally lost, downtrodden, ever starved, quarrelsome and envious, then only will India awake, when hundreds of large-hearted men and women giving up all their desires of enjoying the luxuries of life will long and exert themselves to their utmost for the well-being of the millions of their countrymen who are gradually sinking lower and lower in the vortex of destitution and ignorance. Be patriots. Love the race which has done such great things for us in the past. Feel, therefore, my would-be reformers, my would-be patriots, do you feel? Do you feel that millions and millions of the descendants of God and of sages have become next-door neighbors to brutes? Do you feel that millions are starving today and millions have been starving for ages? Do you feel that ignorance has come over the land as a dark cloud? Does it make you restless? Does it make you sleepless? Has it gone into your blood, coursing through your veins, becoming consonant with your heartbeats? Has it made you almost mad? That is the first step to become a patriot, the very first step. You may feel then, but instead of spending your energies in frothy talk, have you found any way out, any practical solution? Some help instead of condemnation, some sweet words to soothe their miseries, to bring them out of this living death? Yet, that is not all. Have you got the will to surmount mountain-high obstructions? If the whole world stands against you sword in hand, would you still dare to do what you think is right? If your wives and children are against you, if all your money goes, your name dies, your wealth vanishes, would you still stick to it? Would you still pursue it and go on steadily towards your own goal? Have you got that steadfastness? If you have these three things, each one of you will work miracles. To the pioneers of the nation building, train up a band of fiery young men. Put your fire in them and gradually increase the organization, letting it widen and widen its circle. My faith is in the younger generation, the modern generation. Out of them will come my workers. They will work out the whole problem like lions. My brave boys, nothing else is necessary but these: love, sincerity, and patience. What is life but growth? That is expansion. That is love. Therefore, all love is life. It is the only law of life. All selfishness is death. And this is true here or hereafter. Even if there is no hereafter, it is life to do good. It is death not to do good to others. 90% of human brutes you see are dead, are ghosts. For none lives, my boys, but he who loves. Feel, my children, feel. Feel for the poor, the ignorant, the downtrodden. Feel till the heart stops and the brain reels and you think you will go mad. Then pour the soul out at the feet of the Lord, and then will come power, help, and indomitable energy. Struggle. Struggle was my motto for the last 10 years. Struggle. Still say I. When it was all dark, I used to say, struggle. When light is breaking in, I still say, struggle. Be not afraid, my children. Look not up in that attitude of fear towards that infinite starry vault as if it would crush you. Wait. In a few hours more, the whole of it will be under your feet. Wait. Money does not pay, nor name. Fame does not pay, nor learning. It is love that pays. It is character that cleaves its ways through adamantine walls of difficulties. Trust not to the so-called rich. They are more dead than alive. The hope lies in you, in the meek, the lowly, but the faithful. Have faith in the Lord. No policy, it is nothing. Feel for the miserable and look up for help. It shall come. I have traveled 12 years with this load in my heart and this idea in my head. I have gone from door to door of the so-called rich and great. With a bleeding heart, I have crossed half the world to this strange land, seeking for help. The Lord is great. I know. He will help me. I may perish of cold or hunger in this land, but I bequeath to you, young men, this sympathy, this struggle for the poor, the ignorant, the oppressed. Go now this minute to the temple of Parthasarathi, and before him, who was friend to the poor and lowly cowherds of Gokula, who never shrank to embrace the Pariya Guhaka, who accepted the invitation of a prostitute in preference to that of the nobles, and saved her in his incarnation as Buddha. Yea, down on your faces before him, and make a great sacrifice, the sacrifice of a whole life for them, for whom he comes from time to time, whom he loves above all, the poor, the lowly, the oppressed. Vow then to devote your whole lives to the cause of the redemption of these 300 millions, going down and down every day. Do not look up to the so-called rich and great. Do not care for the heartless intellectual writers and their cold-blooded newspaper articles. Faith, sympathy, fiery faith and fiery sympathy. Life is nothing, death is nothing, hunger is nothing, cold nothing. Glory unto the Lord. March on. The Lord is our general. Do not look back to see who falls. Forward, onward. Thus and thus we shall go on. Brethren, one falls and another takes up the work. The keynote: renunciation and service. Our method is very easily described. It simply consists in reasserting the national life. Buddha preached renunciation. India heard, and yet in 6 centuries she reached her greatest height. The secret lies there. The national ideals of India are renunciation and service. Intensify her in those channels, and the rest will take care of itself. Self-reliance and self-respect. The great thing is to have faith in oneself, even before faith in God, but the difficulty seems to be that we are losing faith in ourselves day by day. That is my objection against the reformers. What we want is this Shraddha. Unfortunately, it has nearly vanished from India. And this is why we are in our present state. What makes the difference between man and man is the difference in this Shraddha and nothing else. What makes one man great and another weak and low is this Shraddha. My master used to say, he who thinks himself weak will become weak. And that is true. This Shraddha must enter into you. Whatever of material power you see manifested by the Western races is the outcome of this Shraddha. Because they believe in their muscles. And if you believe in your spirit, how much more will it work? In addition, the intense spirit of activity. We want that energy, that love of independence, that spirit of self-reliance, that immovable fortitude, that dexterity in action, that bond of unity of purpose, that thirst for improvement. Checking a little the constant looking back to the past, we want that expansive vision infinitely projected forward. And we want that intense spirit of activity, which will flow through our every vein from head to foot. 3 things are necessary to make every man great, every nation great. 1. Conviction of the powers of goodness. 2. Absence of jealousy and suspicion. 3. Helping all who are trying to be and not do good. The faculty of organization is entirely absent in our nature, but this has to be infused. The great secret is absence of jealousy. Be always ready to concede to the opinions of your brethren and try always to conciliate. That is the whole secret. It is absolutely necessary for you to learn from the Englishman the idea of prompt obedience to leaders, the absence of jealousy, the indomitable perseverance and the undying faith in himself. As soon as he selects a leader for a work, the Englishman sticks to him through thick and thin and obeys him. Here in India, everybody wants to become a leader, and there is nobody to obey. Everybody should learn to obey before he can command. There is no end to our jealousies. Until this absence of jealousy and obedience to leaders are learned, there will be no power of organization. We shall have to remain the hopelessly confused mob that we are now, hoping and doing nothing. I hope that every one of us here will have breath enough and at the same time faith enough. I want the intensity of the fanatic plus the extensity of the materialist. Deep as the ocean, broad as the infinite skies, that is the sort of heart we want. Let us be as progressive as any nation that ever existed, and at the same time as faithful and conservative towards our traditions. The laboring classes will rise. Human society, in turn, governed by the 4 castes, the priests, the soldiers, the traders, and the laborers. Each state has its glories as well as its defects. When the priest, that is Brahmin, rules, there is a tremendous exclusiveness on hereditary grounds. The person of the priests and their descendants are hemmed in with all sorts of safeguards. None but they have any knowledge. None but they have the right to impart that knowledge. Its glory is that at this period is laid the foundation of sciences. The priests cultivate the mind, for through the mind they govern. The military, that is Kshatriya rule, is tyrannical and cruel, but they are not exclusive. And during that period, arts and social culture attain their height. The commercial, that is Vaishya, rule comes next. It is awful in its silent, crushing and blood-sucking power. Its advantage is, as the trader himself goes everywhere, he is a good disseminator of ideas collected during the 2 previous states. They are still less exclusive than the military, but culture begins to decay. Last will come the laborer or Shudra rule. Its advantages will be the distribution of physical comforts. Its disadvantages, perhaps, is the lowering of culture. There will be a great distribution of ordinary education, but extraordinary geniuses will be less and less. Yet, the first 3 have had their day. Now is the time for the last. They must have it. None can resist it. A time will come when there will be the rising of the Sudra classes with their Sudrahood. That is to say, not like that as at present, when the Sudras are becoming great by acquiring the characteristic qualities of the Vaishya or the Kshatriya. The Sudras of every country, with their inborn Sudra nature and habits, not becoming in essence Vaishya or Kshatriya, but remaining as Sudras, will gain absolute supremacy in every society. The first glow of the dawn of this new power has already begun to break slowly upon the Western world, and the thoughtful are at their wits' end to reflect upon the final issue of this fresh phenomenon. Socialism, anarchism, nihilism, and others like sect are the vanguard of the social revolution that is to follow. Don't you see? I can see through the veil the shadow of the coming events of the world. By God's grace, it has descended on me. This insight of mine, through years of close observation, study and travel, that is sadhana. As the astronomers see the movement of the stars through telescope, likewise, the movement of the world falls within the range of my vision. You take it from me. This rising of the Sudras will take place first in Russia, then in China. India will rise next and will play a vital role in shaping the future world. If it is possible to form a state in which the knowledge of the priest period, the culture of the military, the distributive spirit of the commercial, and the ideal of equality of the last can all be kept intact minus their evils, it will be an ideal state. But is it possible? The other systems have been tried and found wanting. Let this one be tried, if for nothing else, for the novelty of the thing. A redistribution of pain and pleasure is better than always the same persons having pains and pleasures. The sum total of good and evil in the world remains ever the same. The yoke will be lifted from the shoulder to shoulder by new systems. That is all. New India. Let New India arise. Let her arise out of the peasant's cottage, grasping the plough out of the huts of the fisherman, the cobbler and the sweeper. Let her spring from the grocer's shop, from beside the oven of the fritter seller. Let her emanate from the factory, from marts and from markets. Let her emerge from groves and forests, from hills and mountains. These common people have suffered oppression for thousands of years, suffered it without murmur, and as a result have got wonderful fortitude. They have suffered eternal misery, which has given them unflinching vitality. Living on a handful of grain, they can convulse the world. Give them only half a piece of bread, and the whole world will not be big enough to contain their energy. They are endowed with the inexhaustible vitality of Raktavija. And besides, they have got the wonderful strength that comes of a pure and moral life, which is not to be found anywhere else in the world. Such peacefulness, such contentment, such love, such power of silent and incessant work, and such manifestation of lion strength in times of action, where else will you find these? Skeletons of the past, there before you are your successors, the India that is to be. India, the focus of the day. Shall India die? Then from the world all spirituality will be extinct, all sweet soul sympathy for religion will be extinct, all ideality will be extinct, and in its place will reign the duality of lust and luxury as the male and female deities. With money as its priest, fraud, force and competition its ceremonies, and the human soul its sacrifice. Such a thing can never be. The power of suffering is infinitely greater than the power of doing. The power of love is infinitely of greater potency than the power of hatred. The longest night seems to be passing away. The sorest trouble seems to be coming to an end at last. The seeming corpse appears to be awaking, and a voice is coming to us. Away back where history and even tradition fails to peep into the gloom of the past, coming down from there, reflected as it were from peak to peak of the infinite Himalaya of knowledge and of love and of work. India, this motherland of ours, a voice is coming unto us, gentle, firm and yet unmistakable in its utterances, and is gaining volume as days pass by, and behold, the sleeper is awakening. Like a breeze from the Himalayas, it is bringing life into the almost dead bones and muscles. The lethargy is passing away, and only the blind cannot see, or the perverted will not see, and she is awakening, this motherland of ours, from her deep, long sleep. None can resist her anymore. Never is she going to sleep anymore. No outward powers can hold her back anymore. There were many good things in the ancient times, but there were bad things too. The good things are to be retained, but the India that is to be, the future India, must be much greater than ancient India. The past was great, no doubt, but I sincerely believe that the future will be more glorious still. India will be raised, not with the power of the flesh, but with the power of the spirit, not with the flags of destruction, but with the flag of peace and love, the garb of sannyasin, not by the power of wealth, but by the power of the begging bowl. But one vision I see clearer as life before me, that the ancient mother has awakened once more, sitting on a throne, rejuvenated, more glorious than ever? Proclaim her to all the world with the voice of the peace and benediction. There have been great conquering races in the world. We also have been great conquerors. The story of our conquest has been described by the noble emperor of India, Ashoka, as a conquest of religion and of spirituality. Once more, the world must be conquered by India. This is the dream of my life. This is the great ideal before us, and everyone must be ready for it. The conquest of the whole world by India, nothing less than that, and we must all get ready for it. Strain every nerve for it. Up, India, and conquer the world with your spirituality. Ay, as has been declared on this soil first, love must conquer hatred. Hatred cannot conquer itself. Materialism and all its miseries can never be conquered by materialism. Armies, when they attempt to conquer armies, only multiply and make brutes of humanity. Spirituality must conquer the West. Slowly, they are finding out what they want in spirituality to preserve them as nations. They are waiting for it. They are eager for it. Where is the supply to come from? Where are the men ready to go out to every country in the world with the messages of the great sages of India? Where are the men who are ready to sacrifice everything so that this message shall reach every corner of the world? Such heroic souls are wanted to help the spread of truth. Such heroic workers are wanted to go abroad and help to disseminate the great truths of the Vedanta. The world wants it. Without it, the world will be destroyed. The whole of the Western world is on a volcano, which may burst tomorrow, go to pieces tomorrow. They have searched every corner of the world and have found no respite. They have drunk deep of the cup of pleasure and found it vanity. Now is the time to work so that India's spiritual ideas may penetrate deep into the West. We must go out. We must conquer the world through our spirituality and philosophy. There is no other alternative. We must do it or die. Once in far remote antiquity, the Indian philosophy, coming in contact with Greek energy, led to the rise of the Persian, the Roman, and other great nations. After the invasion of Alexander the Great, these two great waterfalls colliding with each other deluged nearly half of the globe with spiritual tides, such as Christianity. Again, a similar commingling, resulting in the improvement and prosperity of Arabia, led in the foundation of modern European civilization. And perhaps in our own day, such a time for the conjunction of these two gigantic forces has presented itself again. This time, their center is India.
End of Chapter 3. My India, the India Eternal, by Swami Vivekananda. This is a Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari recording. All recordings of Vivekananda Kendra are in the public domain. For more information and also to volunteer, please visit www.vkendra.org.
This is a Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari recording. All recordings of Vivekananda Kendra are in the public domain. For more information and also to volunteer, please visit www.vkendra.org. My India, the India Eternal, by Swami Vivekananda. Read by Noina Chatterjee. Chapter 4. Education, the Panacea.
Knowledge, inherent in man. What we say a man knows should, in strict psychological language, be what he discovers or unveils. What a man learns is really what he discovers by taking the cover off his own soul, which is a mine of infinite knowledge. We say Newton discovered gravitation. Was it sitting anywhere in a corner waiting for him? It was his own mind. The time came and he found it out. All knowledge that the world has ever received comes from the mind. The infinite library of the universe is in your own mind. The external world is simply the suggestion, the occasion, which sets you to study your own mind, but the object of your study is always your own mind. The falling of an apple gave the suggestion to Newton, and he studied his own mind. He rearranged all the previous links of thought in his mind and discovered a new link among them, which we call the law of gravitation. It was not in the apple, nor in anything in the center of the earth. All knowledge, therefore secular or spiritual, is in the human mind. In many cases, it is not discovered, but remains covered. And when the covering is being slowly taken off, we say, we are learning. And the advance of knowledge is made by the advance of this process of uncovering. The man from whom this veil is being lifted is the more knowing man. The man upon whom it lies thick is ignorant. And the man from whom it has entirely gone is all-knowing, omniscient. There have been omniscient men, and I believe there will be yet, and that there will be myriads of them in the cycles to come. The essence of education. Education is the manifestation of the perfection already in man. Therefore, the only duty of the teacher is to remove all obstructions from the way. The true education, however, is not yet conceived of amongst us. I never define anything. Still, it may be described as a development of faculty, not an accumulation of words, or as a training of individuals to will rightly and efficiently. The huge steamer, the mighty railway engine, they are non-intelligent. They move, turn, and run, but they are without intelligence. And yonder tiny worm which moved away from the railway line to save its life, why is it intelligent? There is no manifestation of will in the machine. The machine never wishes to transgress law. The worm wants to oppose law, rises against law whether it succeeds or not, therefore it is intelligent. Greater is the happiness, higher is the jiva, in proportion as this will is more successfully manifest. The will of God is perfectly fruitful, therefore He is the highest. What is education? Is it book learning? No. Is it diverse knowledge? Not even that. The training by which the current and expression of will are brought under control and become fruitful is called education. Now consider, is that education as a result of which the will, being continuously choked by force through generations, is well nigh killed out? Is that education under whose sway even the old ideas, let alone the new ones, are disappearing one by one? Is that education which is slowly making man a machine? It is more blessed, in my opinion, even to go wrong impelled by one's free will and intelligence than to be good as an automation. Education is not filling the mind with lot of facts. Perfecting the instrument and getting complete mastery of my own mind is the ideal of education. To me, the very essence of education is concentration of mind, not the collecting of facts. If I had to do my education over again and had any voice in the matter, I would not study facts at all. I would develop the power of concentration and detachment. And then with a perfect instrument, I could collect facts at will. Side by side in the child should be developed the power of concentration and detachment. Education is not the amount of information that is put into your brain and runs riot there, undigested, all your life. We must have life-building, man-making, character-making assimilation of ideas. If you have assimilated 5 ideas and made them your life and character, you have more education than any man who has got by heart a whole library. If education is identical with information, the libraries are the greatest sages in the world, and encyclopedias are the rishis. We want that education by which character is formed, strength of mind is increased, the intellect is expanded, and by which one can stand on one's own feet. The education which does not help the common mass of people to equip themselves for the struggle for life, which does not bring out strength of character, a spirit of philanthropy, and the courage of a lion, is it worth the name? Real education is that which enables one to stand on one's own legs. Another thing that we want is the abolition of that system which aims at educating your boys in the same manner as that of the man who battered his ass, being advised that it could thereby be turned into a horse. No one can teach anybody. The teacher spoils everything by thinking that he is teaching. Thus Vedanta says that within man is all knowledge, even in a boy it is so. And it requires only an awakening, and that much work is the work of a teacher. We have to do only so much for the boys that they may learn to apply their own intellect to the proper use of their hands, legs, ears, eyes, etc. And finally, everything will become easy. Hands off, as I always say, and everything will be right. That is, our duty is to clear the way. Do not try to disturb the faith of any man. If you can give him something better, if you can, get hold of a man where he stands and give him a push upwards, do so. But do not destroy what he has. The only true teacher is he who can convert himself, as it were, into 1,000 person at a moment's notice. The only true teacher is he who can immediately come down to the level of the student and transfer his soul to the student's soul and see through the student's eyes and hear through his ears and understand through his mind. Such a teacher can really teach, and none else. All these negative, breaking down, destructive teachers that are in the world can never do any good. A close personal contact between the teacher and the taught. My idea of education is personal contact with the teacher. Guru Graha Vasa. Without the personal life of a teacher, there would be no education. Take your universities. What have they done during the 50 years of their existence? They have not produced one original man. They are merely an examining body. The idea of the sacrifice for the common weal is not yet developed in our nation. One should live from his very boyhood with one whose character is like a blazing fire, and should have before him a living example of the highest teaching. Mere reading that it is a sin to tell a lie will be of no use. Every boy should be trained to practice absolute brahmacharya, and then only faith, shraddha, will come. Otherwise, why will not one who has no shraddha speak an untruth? In our country, the imparting of knowledge has always been through men of renunciation. India had all good prospects so long ago as Tyagis, men of renunciation, used to impart knowledge. Education and religion. I look upon religion as the innermost core of education. The root is religion. Religion is as the rice, and everything else like the curries. Taking only curries causes indigestion, and so is the case with taking rice alone. After preaching spiritual knowledge, along with it will come that secular knowledge and every other knowledge that you want. But if you attempt to get the secular knowledge without religion, I tell you plainly, vain is your attempt in India. It will never have a hold on the people. Swamiji's plan about religion-centered education. We must have a temple. For with Hindus, religion must come first. Then, you may say, all sects will quarrel about it, but we will make it a non-sectarian temple, having only Om as the symbol, the greatest symbol of any sect. If there is any sect here which believes that Om ought not to be the symbol, it has no right to call itself Hindu. All will have the right to interpret Hinduism, each one according to his own sect ideas, but we must have a common temple. You can have your own images and symbols in other places, but do not quarrel here with those who differ from you. Here should be taught the common grounds of our different sects, and at the same time the different sects should have perfect liberty to come and teach their doctrines, with only one restriction, that is, not to quarrel with the other sects. Say what you have to say, the world wants it, but the world has no time to hear what you think about other people. You can keep that to yourselves. Secondly, in connection with this temple, there should be an institution to train teachers who must go about preaching religion and giving secular education to our people. They must carry both. As we have been already carrying religion from door to door, let us along with it carry secular education also. That can be easily done. then the work will extend through these bands of teachers and preachers, and gradually we shall have similar temples in other places, until we have covered the whole of India. That is my plan. Not negative, positive education. We must give the public only positive ideas. Negative thoughts weaken men. Do you not find that where parents are constantly taxing their sons to read and write, telling them they will never learn anything, and calling them fools and so forth, the latter do actually turn out to be so in many cases? If you speak kind words to boys and encourage them, they are bound to improve in time. If you can give them positive ideas, people will grow up to be men and learn to stand on their own legs. In language and literature, in poetry and the arts, in everything we must point out not the mistakes that people are making in their thoughts and actions, but the way in which they will gradually be able to do these things better. Pointing out mistakes wounds a man's feelings. We have seen how Sri Ramakrishna would encourage even those whom he considered as worthless and change the very course of their lives thereby. His very method of teaching was a unique phenomenon. In New York, I used to observe the Irish colonist come, downtrodden, haggard-looking, destitute of all possessions at home, penniless and wooden-headed, with their only belongings, a stick and a bundle of rags hanging at the end of it, fright in their steps, alarm in their eyes. A different spectacle in 6 months. The man walks upright. His attire is changed. In his eyes and steps, there is no more sign of fright. What is the cause? Our Vedanta says that an Irishman was kept surrounded by contempt in his own country. The whole of nature was telling him with one voice, "Pat, you have no more hope. You were born a slave and will remain so." Having been thus told from his birth, Pat believed in it and hypnotized himself that he was very low, and the Brahman in him shrank away. While no sooner had he landed in America that the shout went up on all sides, "Pat, you are a man as we are. It is man who has done all. A man like you and me can do everything. Have courage." Pat raised his head and saw that it was so. The Brahman within woke up. Nature herself spoke, as it were, "Arise, awake," etc. Likewise, the education that our boys receive is very negative. The schoolboy learns nothing, but has everything of his own broken down. Want of Shraddha is the result. The Shraddha which is the keynote of the Vedas and the Vedantas, the Shraddha which emboldened Nachiketa to face Yama and question him, through which Shraddha this world moves, the annihilation of that Shraddha. Therefore, are we so near destruction? The remedy now is the spread of education. First of all, self-knowledge. I do not mean thereby matted hair, staff, komandalu, and mountain caves which the word suggests. What do I mean then? Dualist, qualified monist, Shaiva, Vaishnava, Sakta, even the Buddhist and the Jain and others, whatever sects have arisen in India, are all at one in this respect, that infinite power is latent in the Jivatma, individualized soul. There is the same Atma in all, the difference being only in manifestation. That power manifests as soon as it gets the opportunity and the right place and time. From the highest god to the meanest grass, the same power is present in all, whether manifested or not. We shall have a call forth that power by going from door to door. Secondly, along with this, education has to be imparted. The old institution of living with the Guru and similar systems of imparting education are needed. What we want are Western science coupled with Vedanta, Brahmacharya as the guiding motto, and also Shraddha and faith in one's own self. What we need is to study, independent of foreign control, different branches of the knowledge that is our own, and with it the English language and Western science. We need technical education and all else that may develop industries so that men, instead of seeking for service, may earn enough to provide for themselves and save something against a rainy day. Not that education which inculcates weakness. I have no objection to dualism in many of its forms. I like most of them. But I have objection to every form of teaching which inculcates weakness. This is the one question I put to every man, woman, or child when they are in physical, mental, or spiritual training. Are you strong? Do you feel strength? For I know it is truth alone that gives strength. I know that truth alone gives life, and nothing but going towards reality will make us strong. And none will reach truth until he is strong. Every system, therefore, which weakens the mind, makes one superstitious, makes one mob, makes one desire all sorts of wild impossibilities, mysteries, and superstitions, I do not like, because its effect is dangerous. Such systems never bring any good. Such things create morbidity in the mind, make it weak, so weak that in course of time it will be almost impossible to receive truth or live up to it. Self-reliance, our goal. All the wealth of the world cannot help one little Indian village if the people are not taught to help themselves. Our work should be mainly educational, both moral and intellectual. Educate the people so that they may learn to be self-reliant, frugal, and not given to marrying, and thus save themselves from future famine. Flaws in the present system. It, that is the present university system, is almost wholly one of defects. Why, it is nothing but a perfect machine for turning out clerks. I would even thank my stars if that were all. But no. See how men are becoming destitute of Shraddha and faith. They assert that the Gita is only an interpolation and that the Vedas are but rustic songs. They like to master every detail concerning things and nations outside of India. But if you ask them, they do not know even the names of their own forefathers up to the 7th generation, not to speak of the 14th. A nation that has no history of its own has nothing in this world. Do you believe that one who has such faith and pride as to feel, I come of noble descent, can ever turn out to be bad? How could that be? That faith in himself would curb his actions and feelings, so much so that he would rather die than commit wrong. So a national history keeps a nation well restrained and does not allow it to sink so low. Looking from one standpoint, you should rather be grateful to the Viceroy for his proposal of reforming the university system, which means practically abolishing higher education. The country will at least feel some relief by having breathing time. Goodness gracious, what a fuss and fury about graduating. And after a few days, all cools down. And after all that, what is it they learn about that? What religion and customs we have are all bad, and what the Westerners have are all good. At last, they cannot keep the wolf from the door. What does it matter if this higher education remains or goes? It would be better if the people got a little technical education so that they might find work and earn their bread, instead of dawdling about and crying for service. The education that you are getting now has some good points, but it has a tremendous disadvantage which is so great that the good things are all weighed down. In the first place, it is not a man-making education. It is merely and entirely a negative education. A negative education or any training that is based on negation is worse than death. The child is taken to school, and the first thing he learns is that his father is a fool. The second thing that his grandfather is a lunatic. The third thing that all his teachers are hypocrites. The fourth that all the sacred books are lies. By the time he's 16, he is a mass of negation, lifeless and boneless. And the result is that 50 years of such education has not produced one original man in the 3 presidencies. Every man of originality that has been produced has been educated elsewhere and not in this country. Or they have gone to the old universities once more to cleanse themselves of superstitions. Education can eradicate destitution of the masses. Education Education, education alone. Traveling through many cities of Europe and observing in them the comforts and education of even the poor people, there was brought to my mind the state of our own poor people, and I used to shed tears. What made the difference? Education was the answer I got. Through education comes faith in one's own self, and through faith in one's own self, the inherent Brahman is waking up in them, while the Brahman in us is gradually becoming dormant. How can there be any progress of the country without the spread of education, the dawning of knowledge? But know for certain that absolutely nothing can be done to improve the state of things, unless there is spread of education first among the women and the masses. History and the Puranas, housekeeping and the arts, the duties of home life and principles that make for the development of an ideal character have to be taught with the help of modern science, and the women students must be trained up in the ethical and spiritual life. It is only in the homes of educated and pious mothers that great men are born. Mass education. Educate and raise the masses, and thus alone a nation is possible. The whole defect is here. The real nation who live in cottages have forgotten their manhood, their individuality. Trodden under the foot of the Hindu, Mussulman or Christian, they have come to think that they are born to be trodden under the foot of everybody who has money enough in his pocket. They are to be given back their lost individuality. They are to be educated. Our duty is to put the chemicals together. The crystallization will come through God's laws. Let us put ideas into their heads, and they will do the rest. Now this means educating the masses. Here are these difficulties. A pauper government cannot, will not, do anything, so no help from that quarter. Even supposing we are in a position to open schools in each village free, still the poor boys would rather go to the plough to earn their living than come to your school. Neither have we the money, nor can we make them come to education. The problem seems hopeless. I have found a way out. It is this. If the mountain does not come to Muhammad, Muhammad must go to the mountain. If the poor cannot come to education, education must reach them at the plough, in the factory, everywhere. How? You have seen my brethren. Now I can get hundreds of such all over India, unselfish, good and educated. Let these men go from village to village, bringing not only religion to the door of everyone, but also education. So I have a nucleus of organizing the widows also as instructors to our women. Now suppose the villagers after their day's work have come to their village and sitting under a tree or somewhere are smoking and talking the time away. Suppose two of these educated sannyasins get hold of them there and with a camera throw astronomical or other pictures, scenes from different nations, histories, etc. Thus with globes, maps, etc. and all this orally, how much can be done that way? It is not that the eye is the only door of knowledge. The ear can also do the same. So they would have ideas and morality and hope for better. Here our work ends. Let them do the rest. There are thousands of single-minded, self-sacrificing sannyasins in our own country, going from village to village, teaching religion. If some of them can be organized as teachers of secular things also, they will go from place to place, from door to door, not only preaching but teaching also. Suppose two of these men go to a village in the evening with a camera, a globe, some maps, etc. They can teach a great deal of astronomy and geography to the ignorant. By telling stories about different nations, they can give the poor 100 times more information through the ear than they can get in a lifetime through books. If there is inequality in nature, still there must be equal chance for all. Or if greater for some and for some less, the weaker should be given more chance than the strong. In other words, a Brahmin is not so much in need of education as a Chandala. If the son of a Brahmin needs one teacher, that of a Chandala needs 10. For greater help must be given to him whom nature has not endowed with an acute intellect from birth. Female education. Religion, arts, science, housekeeping, cooking, sewing, hygiene. The simple essential points in these subjects ought to be taught to our women. But only teaching rites of worship won't do. Their education must be an eye-opener in all matters. Ideal characters must always be presented before the view of the girls to imbibe them with a devotion to lofty principles of selflessness. The noble examples of Sita, Savitri, Damayanti, Lilavati, Kana and Meera should be brought home to their minds, and they should be inspired to mold their own lives in the light of these. But the truth is that some defect or other must creep into that learning or culture which is not founded on a religious basis. But now female education is to be spread with religion at its center. All other training should be secondary to religion. Religious training, the formation of character and observance of the vow of celibacy, these should be attended to. In the female education, which is obtained up till now in India, it is religion that has been made a secondary concern. Education through colloquial languages. In our country, owing to all learning being in Sanskrit from the ancient times, there has arisen an immeasurable gulf between the learned and the common folk. All the great personages, from Buddha down to Chaitanya and Ramakrishna, who came for the well-being of the world, taught the common people in the language of the people themselves. Of course, scholarship is an excellent thing. But cannot scholarship be displayed through any other medium than a language that is stiff and unintelligible, that is unnatural and merely artificial? Is there no room for art in the spoken language? What is the use of creating an unnatural language to the exclusion of the natural one? Do you not think out your scholastic researches in the language which you are accustomed to speak at home? Why then do you introduce such a queer and unwieldy thing when you proceed to put them in black and white? The language in which you think out philosophy and science in your mind and argue with others in public, is not that the language for writing philosophy and science? If it is not, how then do you reason out those truths within yourself and in company of others in that very language, the language in which we naturally express ourselves, in which we communicate our anger, grief, or love, etc.? There cannot be a fitter language than that. We must stick to that idea, the manner of expression, that diction and all. No artificial language can ever have that force and that brevity and expressiveness, or admit of being given any turn you please as that spoken language. Language must be made like pure steel. Turn and twist it any way you like, it is again the same. It cleaves a rock in twain at one stroke, without its edge being turned. Our language is becoming artificial by imitating the slow and pompous movement, and only that, of Sanskrit. And language is the chief means and index of a nation's progress. Language is the vehicle of ideas. It is the ideas that are of prime importance. Language comes after. Language or art or music that expresses no meaning and is lifeless is of no good. Now they will understand that the more strength is infused into the national life, the more will language, art and music, etc. become spontaneously instinct with ideas and life. The volume of meaning that a couple of words of everyday use will convey, you may search in vain in 2,000 set epithets. The greatness of a teacher consists in the simplicity of his language. My ideal of language is my master's language, most colloquial and yet most expressive.
End of Chapter 4. My India, the India Eternal by Swami Vivekananda. This is a Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari recording. All recordings of Vivekananda Kendra are in the public domain. For more information and also to volunteer, please visit www.vkendra.org. This is a Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari recording. All recordings of Vivekananda Kendra are in the public domain. For more information and also to volunteer, please visit www.vkendra.org. My India, the India Eternal by Swami Vivekananda. Read by Noina Chatterjee. Chapter 5. Problems of Women.
The ideal of Indian womanhood. O India, forget not that the ideal of thy womanhood is Sita, Savitri, Damayanti. The ideal of womanhood in India is motherhood, that marvelous, unselfish, all-suffering, ever-forgiving mother. It is unfair to judge women in the East by the Western standards. In the West, woman is the wife, and in the East, she is the mother. In India, the woman was the visible manifestation of God, and that her whole life was given up to the thought that she was a mother. And to be a perfect mother, she must be chaste. Our women are not so learned, but they are more pure. To all women, every man, save her husband, should be as her son. To all men, every woman, save his own wife, should be as his mother. When I look about me and see what you call gallantry, my soul is filled with disgust. Not until you learn to ignore the question of sex and to meet on a ground of common humanity will your women really develop. Until then, they are playthings, nothing more. All this is the cause of divorce. Your men bow low and offer a chair, but in another breath they offer compliments. They say, "Oh madam, how beautiful are your eyes. What right have they to do this? How dare a man venture so far? And how can you women permit it?" Such things develop the less noble side of humanity. They do not tend to nobler ideals. We should not think that we are men and women, but only that we are human beings, born to cherish and to help one another. Neglect of women, cause of India's downfall. In India, there are two great evils, trampling on the women and grinding the poor through caste restrictions. Here in America, men treat their women as well as can be desired, and hence they are so prosperous, so learned, so free, and so energetic. But why is it that we are slavish, miserable, and dead? The answer is obvious. Without Shakti, which is power, there is no regeneration for the world. Why is it that our country is the weakest and the most backward of all countries? Because Shakti is held in dishonor there. Unfair to discriminate between the sexes. If it is very difficult to understand why in this country so much difference is made between men and women, whereas the Vedanta declares that one and the same conscious self is present in all beings. You always criticize the women, but say, what have you done for their uplift? Is there any sex distinction in Atma, the self? Out with the differentiation between man and woman. All is Atma. Women must be respected. Can you better the condition of your women? Then there will be hope for your well-being. Otherwise, you will remain as backward as you are now. Do you mean to say that the divinity back of woman can ever be cheated? It never was and it never will be. It always asserts itself. Unfailingly, it detects fraud. It detects hypocrisy. Unerringly, it feels the warmth of truth, the light of spirituality, the holiness of purity. Such purity is absolutely necessary if real spirituality is to be attained. There is no chance for the welfare of the world unless the condition of woman is improved. It is not possible for a bird to fly on only one wing. Hence, in the Ramakrishna incarnation, the acceptance of a woman as the Guru, hence his practicing in the woman's garb and frame of mind, hence too his preaching the motherhood of women as representations of the Divine Mother. Hence it is that my first endeavor is to start a mutt for women. This mutt shall be the origin of Gargis and Maitreys, and women of even higher attainments than these. We have seen in Sri Ramakrishna how he had this idea of divine motherhood in every woman, of whatever caste she might be or whatever might be her worth. It is because I have seen this that I ask you all so earnestly to do likewise and open girls' schools in every village and try to uplift them. If the women are raised, then their children will by their noble actions glorify the name of the country. Then will culture, knowledge, power and devotion awaken in the land. In what scriptures do you find statements that women are not competent for knowledge and devotion? In the period of degradation, when the priests made the other castes incompetent for the study of the Vedas, they deprived the women also of all their rights. Otherwise, you will find that in the Vedic or Upanishadic age of Maitreyi, Gargi, and other ladies of revered memory have taken the places of rishis through their skill in discussing about Brahman. In an assembly of 1,000 Brahmins, who were all erudite in the Vedas, Gargi boldly challenged Yajnavalkya in a discussion about Brahman. Since such ideal women were entitled to spiritual knowledge, why shall not the women have the same privilege now? What has happened once can certainly happen again. History repeats itself. All nations have attained greatness by paying proper respect to women. That country and that nation which do not respect women have never become great, nor will ever be in the future. The principal reason why your race has so much degenerated is that you have no respect for these living images of Shakti. Manu says, where women are respected, there the gods delight, and where they are not, their all works and efforts come to naught. There is no hope of rise for that family or country where there is no estimation of women, where they live in sadness. For this reason, they have to be raised first. Education can solve women's problems. The Indian women have many and grave problems, but none that are not to be solved by that magic word, education. Educate your women first and leave them to themselves. Then they will tell you what reforms are necessary for them. With such an education, women will solve their own problems. They have all the time been trained in helplessness, servile dependence on others, and so they are good only to weep their eyes out at the slightest approach of a mishap or danger. Along with other things, they should acquire the spirit of valor and heroism. In the present day, it has become necessary for them also to learn self-defense. See how grand was the Queen of Jhansi. See that every one knows something by which she can earn a living in case of need. To make a beginning in women's education, our Hindu women easily understand what chastity means, because it is in their heritage. Now, first of all, intensify that ideal within them above everything else, so that they may develop a strong character by the force of which, in every stage of their life, whether married or single, if they prefer to remain so, they will not be in the least afraid even to give up their lives rather than flinch an inch from their chastity. It is little heroism to be able to sacrifice one's lives for the sake of one's ideals, whatever that ideal may be. Along with that, they should be taught sciences and other things which would be of benefit not only to them but to others as well. And knowing this, they would easily learn these things and feel pleasure in doing so. I should very much like our women to have your own intellectuality, but not if it must be at the cost of purity. Sita, the ideal of Indian womanhood. Sita is typical of India, the idealized India. The question is not whether she ever lived, whether the story is history or not. We know that the ideal is there. There is no other Pauranika story that has so permeated the whole nation, so entered into its very life, and has so tingled in every drop of blood of the race as the ideal of Sita. Sita is the name in India for everything that is good, pure and holy, everything that in woman we call womanly. If a priest has to bless a woman, he says, "Be Sita." If he blesses a child, he says, "Be Sita." They are all children of Sita and are struggling to be Sita, the patient, the all-suffering, the ever-faithful, the ever-pure wife. Sita was a true Indian by nature. She never returned injury. What to speak of Sita? You may exhaust the literature of the world that is past, and I may assure you that you will have to exhaust the literature of the world of the future before finding another Sita. Sita is unique. That character was depicted once and for all. There may have been several Ramas, perhaps, but never more than one Sita. She is the very type of the true Indian woman. For all the Indian ideals of a perfected woman have grown out of that one life of Sita. And here she stands these thousands of years, commanding the worship of every man, woman and child throughout the length and breadth of the land of Aryavarta. There she will be always, this glorious Sita, purer than purity itself, all patience and all suffering. She who suffered that life of suffering without a murmur, she the ever-chaste and ever-pure wife, she the ideal of the people, the ideals of the God, the great Sita. A national God she must always remain. All our mythology may vanish, even our Vedas may depart, and our Sanskrit language may vanish forever. But so long as there will be 5 Hindus living here, even if only speaking the most vulgar words, there will be the glory of Sita present. Mark my words, Sita has gone into the very vitals of our race. She is there in the blood of every Hindu man and woman. We are all children of Sita. Any attempt to modernize our women, if it tries to take our women away from that ideal of Sita, is immediately a failure, as we see every day. The women of India must grow and develop in the footprints of Sita, and that is the only way. I know that the race that produced Sita, even if it is only dreamt of her, has a reverence for woman that is unmatched on the earth. The ideal of the modern woman, Sharoda Devi. Our mother is a vast reservoir of spiritual energy, though outwardly calm like the deep ocean. Her advent marks the beginning of a new era in the history of India. The ideals lived and taught by her would not only spiritualize the efforts for the emancipation of women in India, but also influence and penetrate into the minds and hearts of women all over the world. Motherhood represented the highest expression of womanhood, especially in India. It is an innate instinct in every woman, the signs of which might be discovered even in a little girl. With the Holy Mother as the center of inspiration, a mutt is to be established on the eastern bank of the Ganga. As brahmacharins and sadhus will be trained in this mutt here, so in the other mutts also, brahmacharins and sadhvis will be trained. You have not yet understood the wonderful significance of mother's life, none of you. But gradually you will know. Without Shakti, there is no regeneration for the world. Why is it that our country is the weakest and the most backward of all countries? Because Shakti is held in dishonor there. Mother has been born to revive that wonderful Shakti in India, and making her the nucleus, once more will Gargis and Maitreys be born into the world. Dear brother, you understand little now, but by degrees you will come to know it all. Hence it is in her mutt that I want first. Without the grace of Shakti, nothing is to be accomplished. What do I find in America and Europe? The worship of Shakti, the worship of power. Yet they worship her ignorantly through sense gratification. Imagine then, what a lot of good they will achieve who will worship her with all purity. In a sattvika spirit, looking upon her as their mother, I am coming to understand things clearer every day. My insight is opening out more and more. Hence, we must first build a mutt for mother. First mother and mother's daughters, then father and father's sons. Can you understand this? To me, mother's grace is 100,000 times more valuable than father's. Mother's grace, Mother's blessings are all paramount to me. Please pardon me. I'm a little bigoted here as regards to Mother. If but Mother orders, her demons can work anything. Brother, before proceeding to America, I wrote to Mother to bless me. Her blessings came, and at one bound I cleared the ocean. There, you see, in this terrible winter, I'm lecturing from place to place and fighting against odds, so that funds may be collected for Mother's mart. Baburam's mother must have lost her sense owing to old age, and that is why she is about to worship Durga in the earthen image, ignoring the living one. Brother, faith is very difficult to achieve. Brother, I shall show how to worship the living Durga, and then only shall I be worthy of my name. I shall be relieved when you will have purchased a plot of land and established there the living Durga, the mother. Till then, I am not returning to my native land. As soon as you can do that, I shall heave a sigh of relief after sending the money. Do you accomplish this festival of Durga of mine by making all the necessary arrangements? Girish Ghosh is adoring the mother splendidly. Blessed he is, and blessed are his followers. Brother, often enough, when I am reminded of the mother, I ejaculate, what after all is Rama? Brother, that is where my fanaticism lies, I tell you. Of Ramakrishna, you may aver, my brother, that he was an incarnation or whatever else you may like, but fie on him who has no devotion for the mother. Swamiji's ideas on a monastery for women. There is no hope of rise for that family or country where there is no estimation of women, where they live in sadness. For this reason, they have to be raised first, and an ideal mat has to be started for them. I never objected to the worship of women who are the living embodiment of Divine Mother, whose external manifestations appealing to the senses have maddened men, but whose internal manifestations such as knowledge, devotion, discrimination, and dispassion make man omniscient, of unfailing purpose, and a knower of Brahman. Saisha prasanna varda nringa bhavati muktaye. She, when pleased, becomes propitious and the cause of the freedom of man. Without propitiating the mother by worship and obeisance, not even Brahma and Vishnu have the power to elude her grasp and attain to freedom. Therefore, for the worship of these family goddess, in order to manifest the Brahman within them, I shall establish the women's mat. Even now there are women disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. With their help I shall start this mat. The Holy Mother will be their central figure, and the wives and daughters of the devotees of Sri Ramakrishna will be its first inmates. For they will easily appreciate the usefulness of such a mat. After that, following their example, many householders will help in this noble work. No great work has been done in the world without sacrifice. Who, on seeing the tiny sprout of the banyan, can imagine that in course of time it will develop into a gigantic banyan tree? At present, I shall start the mat in this way. Later on, you will see that after a generation or two, people of the country will appreciate the worth of this mat. My women disciples will lay down their lives for it. Casting off fear and cowardice, you can also be helpers in this noble mission and hold this high ideal before all. You will see, it will shed its lustre over the whole country in time. On the other side of the Ganga, a big plot of land will be acquired, where unmarried girls or brahmacharini widows will live. Devout married women will also be allowed to stay now and then. Men will have no concern with this mat. The elderly sadhus of the mat will manage the affairs of this mat from a distance. There shall be a girls' school attached to this women's mat, in which religious scriptures, literature, Sanskrit, grammar, and even some amount of English would be taught. Other matters such as sewing, culinary art, rules of domestic work, and upbringing of children will also be taught, while japa, worship, meditation, etc. shall form an indispensable part of the teaching. Those who will be able to live here permanently, renouncing home and family ties, will be provided with food and clothing from this mat. Those who will not be able to do that will be allowed to study in this mat as day scholars. With the permission of the head of the mat, the latter will be allowed even to stay in the mats occasionally, and during such stay will be maintained by the mat. The elder brahmacharinis will take charge of the training of the girl students in brahmacharya. After 5 or 6 years training in this mat, the guardians of the girls may marry them. If deemed fit for yoga and religious life, with the permission of their guardians, they will be allowed to stay in this mat, taking the vow of celibacy. These celibate nuns will in time be the teachers and preachers of the mats. In villages and towns, they will open centers and strive for the spread of female education. Through such devout preachers of characters, there will be the real spread of female education in the country. So long as the students will remain in association with this mat, they must observe brahmacharya as the basic idea of this mat. Spirituality, sacrifice, and self-control will be the motto of the pupils of this mat, and service or seva dharma the vow of their life. In view of such ideal lives, who will not respect and have faith in them? If the life of the women of this country be molded in such fashion, then only will there be the reappearance of such ideal characters as Sita, Savitri, and Gargi. To what straits the strictures of local usages have reduced the women of this country, rendering them lifeless and inert, you could understand if only you visited the Western countries. You alone are responsible for this miserable condition of the women, and it rests with you also to raise them again. Therefore I say, set to work. They must be given education and left to themselves. After that they will act as they think best. Even after marriage and entering the world, the girls educated as above will inspire their husbands with noble ideals and be the mothers of heroic sons. But there must be this rule that the guardians of the students in the women's mat must not even think of marrying them before they attain the age of 15. These learned and accomplished girls will never be in want of bridegrooms. Society nowadays does not follow the texts recommending child marriage, nor will do so in future. Men, hands off. Educate your women first and leave them to themselves. Then they will tell you what reforms are necessary for them. Our right of interference is limited entirely to giving education. Women must be put in a position to solve their own problems in their own way. No one can or ought to do this for them, and our Indian women are as capable of doing it as any in the world. Liberty is the first condition of growth. It is wrong, 1,000 times wrong, if any of you dare to say, I will work out the salvation of this woman or child. I am asked again and again what I think of the widow problem and what I think of the woman question. Let me answer once for all. Am I a widow that you ask me that nonsense? Am I a woman that you ask me that question again and again? Who are you to solve women's problems? Are you the Lord God that you should rule over every widow and every woman? Hands off. They will solve their own problems. To the women of this country, I would say exactly what I say to the men. Believe in India and in our Indian faith. Be strong and hopeful and unashamed. And remember that with something to take, Hindus have immeasurably more to give than any other people in the world. Where is our Gaud Ma? We want 1,000 much mothers with that noble stirring spirit. What was wanted was not a man, but a woman, a real lioness, to work for the Indians, women specially. We want both men and women. There is no distinction of sex in the soul. We want thousands of men and thousands of women who will spread like wildfire from the Himalayas to Cape Comorin, from the North Pole to the South Pole, all over the world. It is no use indulging in child's play, neither is there time for it. Let those who have come for child's play be now off, while there is time, or they will surely come to grief. We want an organization. Off with laziness, spread, run like fire to all places. Who will give the world light? Sacrifice in the past has been the law. It will be, alas, for ages to come. The earth's bravest and best will have to sacrifice themselves for the good of many, for the welfare of all. Buddhas by the hundred are necessary with eternal love and pity. Religions of the world have become lifeless mockeries. What the world wants is character. The world is in need of those whose life is one burning love, selfless. That love will make every word seem like thunderbolt. Bold words and bolder deeds are what we want. Awake, awake, great ones. The world is burning with misery. Can you sleep? With 500 men, the conquest of India might take 50 years. With as many women, not more than a few weeks.
End of chapter 5. My India, the India Eternal by Swami Vivekananda. This is a Vivekananda Kendra Kanyakumari recording. All recordings of Vivekananda Kendra are in the public domain. For more information and also to volunteer, please visit www.vkendra.org.